When tragic events took an unexpected turn, Manul, the cat, found herself completely helpless. She could not protect her cub from impending danger. When everything seemed lost, look who came to the rescue. The events that followed will not leave you indifferent. An unusual sound broke the silence. A muffled cry enveloped the air, as if coming from the depths of the forest. This noise was unlike anything Gleb had ever heard. "I've heard it before," he thought. It sounded like an alarming mixture of desperation and panic, interrupting my usual rounds of the area. Gleb tilted his head, trying to determine the direction from which the call was coming. It seemed to be coming from the old curved edge of the swampy area. The scream grew louder and more desperate by the second, as if someone was calling for help. Overcome by curiosity mixed with concern, Gleb hurried towards the sound, leaving his equipment behind. His heart was beating faster, filled with fear and determination. Determination. The closer he got to the tree, the louder the sounds became, piercing the night's silence. The undergrowth began to thin out, and Gleb suddenly found himself in front of an incredible scene in a small clearing where water filled the entire space. A young kittens holding onto the surface with their last strength struggled against the waves with their frightened eyes, expressing horror as they tried to swim. Out. Each attempt became weaker with each passing second. Gleb froze, realizing that mammals are known for their cautiousness and aggressiveness, especially when in danger. Besides, they swim excellently. He wondered why the mother cat did not come to help her cub. Around him, Gleb noticed a glint of metal against a shadowed background. The paw was tightly clamped in a poacher's chain that clung to a tree trunk. Her eyes full of horror and pain, she begged for help, trying her best to free herself. But the trap held her, too tightly. Gleb's heart sank. He realized that the only hope for the cub was himself. Without delay, the man walked to the edge of the water, took off his shoes, and rolled up his sleeves. He stepped into the murky, cold water. "Baby, I'm here," the man's voice echoed. The frightened animal seemed to calm down a little. The cat froze, and its frantic movements weakened as Gleb approached. The man gently picked it up, wet and trembling. On the shore, he held the cub tightly to his chest, trying to warm him with his own body heat. However, he knew that he could not leave the mother cat in this state. Coming closer to the animal, he examined the chain, trying to find a way to release it without causing pain. Suddenly, the silence was interrupted by the crunch of snow and voices from the forest. Gleb froze, realizing that the poachers were probably returning. The situation had become dangerous. The man was in danger, and he needed to act quickly. After making sure that his hiding place was safe, Gleb took a position nearby to watch what was happening, staying in the shadows. From his secluded spot, Gleb noticed two men dressed in torn and dirty clothes, with rifles and a set of traps slung over their shoulders. Their voices were rough and muffled, and they laughed from time to time, betraying their confidence in the absence of prying eyes. When the poachers came closer to the tree where the chained cat was, Gleb could hear their conversation. One of them pointed to the unfortunate animal and said, "This creature is worth a lot of money." Gleb felt a rage begin to build in him. His fists clenched involuntarily, but he knew that an open confrontation would be fatal for both him and the mammal. Leaving emotions aside, he decided to wait for the right moment to act coolly and carefully, watching every movement of the uninvited guests. Manal, chained to a tree, began to pull on the chain at the sight of the people, giving a low growl. One of the poachers took out a bunch of keys to check the reliability of the trap. When Gleb saw this, he realized that there was a small opportunity to turn the tools against their owners. By picking up a small pebble from the ground, he threw it towards a thick bush. A rustle in the distance instantly attracted the attention of the poachers. "Did you hear that?" one of them whispered. "Let's go check it out." The other nodded, pointing his gun towards the bushes. The poachers were looking for the source of the sound. Gleb slipped unnoticed to the place where they had left their equipment among the scattered things. He found a heavy wrench. Realizing that he had almost no time left, he hurried to the tree to free Manul. But the footsteps of the returning poachers forced him to get out of the car, holding a wrench in his hand and saying in a firm voice, "Go away. You have nothing to do here." The head poacher replied with a sneer, "You seriously think you're going to scare us? This is our territory, and Manul is also ours." Gleb stood between the men and the animal, his expression becoming implacable. "I won't let you take her away," he said with such determination. The poachers froze for a moment, realizing their advantage. Gleb added that they were not alone. Ranger patrols regularly passed through this area. Do you think they would be able to avoid them? The mention of the rangers caused the poachers to feel noticeable concern after a short, tense exchange of glances. One of them decided to take the risk. After giving Gleb a last look, the men disappeared into the forest. Only when they left did Gleb relax. He approached the cat, which continued to growl but calmed down. He carefully removed the chain, holding it firmly against the tree. The freed animal slowly looked around and then hurried towards the bushes, making soft calls. The call was answered by a cub, who ran out of the burnt shelter and rushed towards his mother. Their reunion was gentle. They poked their noses and made contented purrs. Gleb felt deeply relieved watching this. This day was not in vain. If he would have been able to meet those magnificent creatures again, his wish was destined to come true soon. It was a few months ago that Gleb, while performing one of his patrols, freed a cat from the clutches of poachers. On a foggy morning, a light haze shrouded the dense forest as Gleb moved along the winding paths. Gradually, the fog began to thin, revealing a thin trickle of smoke rising into the air, like a lighthouse indicating the presence of a camp. Carefully crouching down, Gleb used the dense foliage as shelter to imperceptibly approach the sounds of the camp from where the smoke was billowing. The rustle of leaves merged with the sounds of the storm, creating an almost indistinguishable cacophony. Gleb began to hear soft voices hiding among the bushes. A picture emerged before him. 3 men with rough-looking equipment, traps and nets. 2 guns were casually leaning against one of the trees. Gleb realized that the situation required caution. Unarmed, except for a small knife that he always carried with him, he knew that a direct confrontation could turn into a disaster. The only reasonable solution was to retreat and seek help later, but fate decreed otherwise. When Gleb stepped back, his foot accidentally stepped on a dry branch, and its soft crunch rang out in the morning silence like a man's shot. He realized that he had been noticed. His heart was racing, but he quickly assessed the man's position, grabbed a weapon, and rushed towards him. The fog, which had previously prevented them from seeing each other, now played on Gleb's side, allowing him to slip deeper into the forest and speed up his pace. Gleb felt his breathing becoming heavy, but he continued to move, putting more distance between himself and his pursuer. However, the relief was short-lived as the man continued to chase after him. Suddenly, she grabbed him by the shoulder, turned him around, and pinned him against a nearby tree. His breath caught in surprise, and a sinister grin played on the face of one of the men, apparently the leader. "He thought you could spy on us." And just leave, he mockingly threw accusations one after another at the poachers. They were angry because of Gleb's efforts. Their traps and nets remained empty. One of them tied his hands with a strong rope, and words were heard which made everything turn cold inside Gleb. "You've been putting sticks in our wheels for too long," he said. "It's time to end this once and for all." Tying him up, they dragged him into the depths of the forest, away from the trails where a person could accidentally pass by. Their every movement and gesture caused Gleb more and more horror. He understood that his life was hanging by a thread and hoped only for a miracle. When they reached a quiet and secluded place, the leader of the poachers suddenly, he raised his hand to signal everyone to stop, saying that no one could find him there. Gleb mentally prepared for the worst, while the sudden rustle in the bushes caught everyone's attention. a formidable cat emerged from the shadows, her gaze fixed on Gleb. She had been months away, but she had not forgotten the man who had once saved her life. Recognizing his scent and voice, the predator rushed to attack with lightning speed, stunned by the sudden threat. The poachers tried to escape, but the predators in human form were forced to retreat. The cat focused her attention on Gleb as he tried to untie the knots. Slowly and carefully she approached him, poking her nose at the rope, showing her intention to help. Gleb understood her intention and allowed her to use her powerful teeth to bite through the strong bonds. After a few moments he gained freedom. Rising to his feet, he turned to the savior, and his heart was filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly, timidly extending his hand towards her. The cat looked at him attentively, tension mixed with calm confidence reflected in her eyes. It was at that moment that a deep understanding arose between them. Man and beast realized the risk they were taking and the protection they could offer each other. Finally, the predator nodded to Gleb, as if saying goodbye, and slowly turned around and disappeared into the dense foliage, fulfilling her duty. In the following days, Gleb often found himself looking in the direction of the fox, reflecting on their unusual savior. He knew that she was still somewhere out there, among the trees. The connection that had been established reminded him of how strong a human influence can be when he decides to protect nature. Gleb can't help but smile at this story because he knows that any good deed will come back to him sooner or later. Dear viewers, what do you think of this amazing story? If you liked it, please let us know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel and see you later.